Be mindful of your feelings.
Your thoughts dwell on your mother.
I miss her.
Afraid to lose her, I think.
What has that got to do with anything?
Everything. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
I think that we can all agree that being a fan of something can be a good thing. Something about a book, TV show, movie, whatever it is, can speak to you. It can bring up strong emotions that you've never quite been able to articulate. And I love fandoms. I love their creativity, their dedication, and they can bring people together. They can create this community where you're able to share your excitement. But as we all know, sometimes fans can be so extreme and so misguided that it creates a level of toxicity that drives away so many people from their beloved fandom. And it's no surprise to most of you, I'm sure, that the Star Wars fandom has some problems. There's a sizable group of Star Wars fans that are just extremely snarky and cynical at the very least. And although a lot of hate has been directed at creator George Lucas, some of it over the years has spilled over into hatred for certain characters, which then quickly evolved into attacking the people that portrayed them. It's one thing to criticize the writing and messages of a show that you might not agree with, but to attack an actor for something beyond just their performance, like things that are completely out of their control, they're just there doing their job, that never made any sense to me. And with the advent of Disney's reboot of films and prestige TV shows, it's only gotten worse. So much so that Ewan McGregor at one point released a video on the official Star Wars Twitter account defending his Obi-Wan series co-star Moses Ingram from these horrible racist comments.
Moses is a brilliant actor, she's a brilliant woman, and she's absolutely amazing in this series. She brings so much to the series, she brings so much to the franchise. And if you're sending her bullying messages, you're no Star Wars fan in my mind.
But how did it get this bad? Like, when did the love turn into hate? Well, for a lot of people, it started with Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Oh, this is the movie that killed my love of Star Wars.
Is it?
George Lucas got the brunt of the criticism, as did Ahmed Best for playing Jar Jar Binks, and unfortunately there was still enough frustration and hate left over to be directed towards a child. 8-year-old Jake Lloyd.
Jake Lloyd was the devil.
No one likes little kids, especially ones that can't act.
And along the way, they come across the death of comedy, Jar Jar Binks, and the death of acting, Anakin Skywalker.
Child stars have had they get a bit of a reputation that they turn to, a life of drugs, so may the force be with you.
Oh, well, thank you.
If he comes out of that mental hospital, types his own name into YouTube, and he just looks at the fourth one, there's us just taking a piss out of him.
But before we attempt to bring balance to the Force, I just want to take this moment and thank all of our amazing supporters on Patreon. Please go to patreon.com/thebackfocus if you're interested in helping this channel grow. Thanks! Before Phantom Menace, Jake Lloyd had some good credits under his belt just being an innocent little kid. His first film role was in this drama called Unhook the Stars, as a pensive little boy whose mother entrusts him with her neighbor, and the two develop this nice friendship.
I want to say thank you to you because you took care of me, helped my mom, and you're also very nice to me, and you're my friend. So I should say thank you.
Hey, what are you doing? You don't have to thank me. We're friends.
He also had a couple episodes of ER.
How you doing there, fella?
I puked twice in the waiting room.
He's kind of embarrassed.
There's 6 other men in line for the bathroom.
And most notably, he was in one of my favorite childhood films, Jingle All the Way, where he played Jamie, son of a stacked Austrian mattress salesman, and he desperately wants a Turbo Man for Christmas.
Tell me, what do you want?
I want the Turbo Man action figure with the arms and legs that move, and the boomerang suitor, and the rock and roll jetpack, and the realistic voice activator that says 5 different phrases, including "It's Turbo Time!" Accessories sold separately, batteries not included.
I thought he was just this great, bright-eyed kid. He had the look, he was able to hit dramatic beats when he's mad at his father. And I loved him in this one moment where Arnold imagines his son as an alcoholic who hates him.
Here's to you, Dad.
And something else that I appreciated, and this may be something that Jake had no control over, but he didn't really enunciate his lines perfectly. You know, he didn't sound polished. He sounded like a genuine little kid.
Don't worry. I got it covered. I wrote Santa.
And then, oh my God, George Lucas is back. Did you hear he's making a new Star Wars? And Jake was one of 3 out of 3,000 kids to travel to Skywalker Ranch and read personally with George Lucas and Natalie Portman. But it really came down to them casting Jake and this other boy named Devin Michael. The New York Times even made a short documentary on Devin and talked to him about his experience with the audition.
I was imagining myself being part of the greatest story ever told. That's what I was there for.
And look, this video is about defending Jake, and I think he's great. But if I'm being objective and putting on a casting director's hat, I'm watching their screen tests and I'm finding myself leaning towards Devin because he had this maturity in him and he kind of seemed wise beyond his years. Just listen and compare how Jake and Devin both read this one line.
You're just a little boy.
I won't always be. I won't always be.
Kind of gives me chills. But I don't know, we're only seeing a snippet of what was undoubtedly an exhausting, lengthy process, and George just saw something in Jake that he wanted for his vision of Anakin.
The performance sort of rises way above what Devin does, because it's so unpredictable and it's kind of
have to go.
Unstudied.
I like Jake, because he seems more natural. I like his body language.
As we all know, they went with Jake. And oddly enough, this is where I kind of have something in common with Jake.
What's it been like? You've been telling all your friends you're leaving for Star Wars, huh?
This is Beverly Strong. She was Jake's manager, as well as my manager when I started acting in 2008. And this is Dennis LaValle, Jake's acting coach, who coached Beverly's clients and many others like Brie Larson, Anton Yelchin, and Ashley Benson, just to name a few. He was my acting teacher and coach for years, and when I talked to him, he had a lot to add to Jake's story.
Jake started spending a lot of time with George. George really took a shine to him, George Lucas. And I said, are we going to, am I going to go with him? Because he needs a coach.
Because that's what you had done with him on previous films.
Yeah, and the word came back that, George really has connected with him and he wants to work with him. And I was like, okay, great. If George Lucas wants to hold you by the hand and take care of you, which is what a 10-year-old boy needs. He needs to be taken care of. Then great. This is going to be great. It'll be great for him. It'll be great for the film.
The hype for this movie was unreal. I mean, nowadays we're all pretty spoiled with our sequels and prequels and spin-offs and streaming series for every intellectual property under the sun, but back in the 90s, stuff like this didn't happen, especially for arguably the most beloved film franchise of all time. Fans waited 18 years for another Star Wars, and it was finally coming around the corner. I mean, we were finally going to get the Darth Vader backstory and watch him become engulfed by the dark side. I remember back in 98, people were buying movie tickets to meet Joe Black just to meet the trailer for Episode 1 and then immediately leave. Remember, this was back in the day when trailers didn't debut on the internet. We actually had to go outside and to a movie theater. I mean, look at this wild montage from the documentary The People vs. George Lucas.
You actually paid to go in to see a movie just to see the trailer, and then you left?
Yes, because it's an awesome 2.5 minutes.
That was incredible. There was nothing, ever, anything like that.
Oh my God! I welled up. I haven't welled up in years.
I just had a heart attack. I think God must be ashamed as a creator. Once he saw the preview for this movie and realized he hasn't made something this good.
The excitement was palpable. Everyone was talking about the Phantom Menace, but there was just a little bit of fear underneath all that excitement. Fans began to wonder and speculate. Was it going to be good? Will it live up to the original movies? How would they handle this bit of backstory or that bit of lore? Why does Puppet Yoda look so busted? Regardless, people still lined up for days to watch it when it finally came out in spring of 1999.
The air is electric.
They're practically, throwing their hats in the air, jumping up and down. People are just crazy with excitement.
Then, in a galaxy far, far away, the lights went dark and scrolling text appears and fans just rejoiced and Star Wars is finally back. But yeah, a lot of people hated it.
And I just remember, thinking, oh my God, is it really this, is it actually this bad?
It just felt like being slapped in the face with a wet fish.
It was like, what? This could suck?
The backlash was intense. People felt as though George Lucas had just personally slighted them in some way by making this movie. And yeah, look, I get it. Like a lot of people in my generation, I can look back objectively and see that it's not the best movie, but when I was 12, I saw it in theaters, and I loved it. The opening crawl with the music and the lightsabers, the droid fights, and trade embargoes and Senate meetings, pod racing, and I liked Jar Jar Binks. I probably laughed when he stepped in the poopy. I didn't care. I was all in. I was a kid.
You weren't there at the beginning. You don't know how good it was, how important. This is it for you. This jumped up firework display of a toy advert. People like you make me sick. What's wrong with you?
But I was definitely in the minority here. The hate was so extreme.
Who there loved the prequel movies? Shut up! You're wrong.
George Lucas raped our childhood. George Lucas raped our childhood.
George, you must own up to your mistake.
There goes my childhood.
No, that's not part of my Star Wars.
Shut the up, okay? Shut the up!
And this is where a lot of the hate spread to the actors involved. Fan and media backlash towards fictional character Jar Jar Binks was so bad that the actor who portrayed him, Ahmed Best, struggled with thoughts of self-harm following the release of Episode 1.
I felt tired of having to fight back against racism and the racial stereotype. I just wanted to play a part. I was exhausted.
And that brings us back to Jake. Now, before we get to the backlash, let's just take an objective look at his performance.
So I remember I was sitting in the premiere, and Jake comes on to the screen for the first time, and I hear his first line.
Are you an angel?
What?
An angel. I heard the deep space pilots talk about that.
And I was like, oh no, who? What?
Now, one big thing I think he probably struggled with was the clunky dialogue, and he had a lot of it, usually exposition to set things up.
You'll never reach the outskirts in time. Sandstorms are very, very dangerous.
We were told things instead of shown things in the performance. In comparison to moments in the original films with Mark Hamill's Luke, he was given more chances to have those quiet, introspective moments, and I felt like Jake just had to say these awkward and stiff lines, which were devoid of any and all stakes.
I'll try spinning. That's a good trick.
Even in these super tense moments, he never really got a chance to showcase his character's sense of danger.
This is tense!
I mean, in theory, that's kind of like a little kid. They just blurt out any little idea or thought that pops into their heads, and they're obsessed with one thing. In Anakin's case, it's pod racing.
Now this is pod racing.
And listen, I don't want this to turn into a snarky George Lucas hit piece, but I would still like to address some things. We don't know everything, we weren't there on set, and I would say a good percentage of the human race has never taken direction from George Lucas in a Star Wars.
I manage action and cut and faster and more intense. And then mostly I sit there looking miserable and quiet.
But from the people who have worked with him, one of their main frustrations with Lucas was his written dialogue.
I mean, the dialogue was a little bit difficult. I remember there was one line that I just begged him to take out.
And I started reading. I didn't think the dialogue was very good, but it held me from page to page.
But we can't turn back. Fear is their greatest defense. I doubt if the actual security there is any greater than it was on Aquilai or Sullust, and what there is most likely directed towards a large-scale assault.
I said to George, you can type this stuff, but you can't say it.
And he was so busy with ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, and Lucas sound, and because he's such a geek at heart, God bless him, great storyteller. When he got onto the set, it was right in the advent of all of this new digital filmmaking. So he was like, I can run 6 cameras at the same time, and he was like a kid in a candy shop.
And also, let's talk about the CGI. I mean, let's be honest here. How do you act when your set looks like this?
I can't hear you, Fred! I can't hear you, Fred!
Acting in this type of environment isn't for everybody. It takes a lot of skill. Because you're on a stage of the director's imagination. You have no clue what the final product will truly end up looking like. As an adult, it's tough. Steve Burns of Blue's Clues had to act with nearly nothing in every episode. He said it was like acting at the bottom of a swimming pool. Sir Ian McKellen, a veteran of stage and screen, decades of work, found it difficult when the set of the Hobbit films utilized green screens when he was so used to location shooting in the Lord of the Rings films.
The day comes to film it, and we just have to do what we're told, really. Now, if I'm not doing it right, darling, you must shout out, but...
Okay.
Now imagine an 8-year-old having to navigate this barren green or blue wasteland. It's no wonder he might have had some trouble.
A central system in the Republic on a very important mission, and it must be kept secret.
Peruska?
Cut. Let's try it again.
Eight us up, please.
Well, there's some pieces in there.
Lisa was going over his lines with him, his mom. You know, she was doing the best job she could with him, but she's not an acting coach. She's not an actor. And Jake didn't really get the kind of attention that he needed. And his performance suffered for that, because somebody that age needs somebody right there to go over the lines with him and go over the lines with him and go over the lines with him and talk about nuance and blah, 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 blah. Okay, all right, we're ready, and then go and put him in front of the camera with all of that still circulating in his head. And then you capture lightning in a bottle, but, you know, running lines in a trailer and then being on set and waiting around for things to be ready and, you know, no.
Go towards the edge on that line.
And it's hard to know exactly where it's gonna trip itself up in a funny kind of way. Because in some stuff, I feel like that emotional scene with his mother, he was like right on the button every single time he did it. You don't quite know what you're gonna get, and it's different every time, and sometimes it's really special, so you don't want to grind it into the ground.
Okay, Jake, take your position, please. Stand by.
So in addition to not having the support he needed, Jake also wasn't old enough or experienced enough to maybe challenge George about his dialogue. He's just along for the ride here. He's doing whatever George tells him to do. But in what reality do you think 8-year-old Jake could have been able to discuss the dialogue with Lucas? I would argue almost no one at that point in time would have been able to convince Lucas to change anything in the prequels. He was in charge, and these movies were going to be made the way he wanted them made. The actors just had to rely on their skill set and trust Lucas, the producers, and the editors. Unfortunately, no one really came out looking the best with this movie, and it's a really good cast. So it just goes to show you that it's not all on the actors. There are several factors that play into each performance for every movie. But after watching it, I will say there is something there with Jake's performance. Like, I'm beginning to see what maybe Lucas saw during those auditions. There's this kind of X factor to him. This innocence you want to see flourish. It's kind of the perfect setup for showing how Anakin went from this bright-eyed, helpful kid to a child-killing, planet-destroying galactic villain. Which makes me think that maybe George didn't want that hint of darkness that Devin had in his screen test. In fact, he pretty much confirms exactly what he wanted in the DVD commentary.
Because the larger story is really how does such a sweet kid like this turn into something as evil as Darth Vader. And I didn't want it to have the obvious, well, he grew up, he was a bad kid to begin with, and he just, part of the story is, you know, how does he become bad? What choices does he make to become bad? So the whole character slant on this film with Anakin was to set him up and develop him and have it be a really positive character.
Some of the best scenes with Jake are between Anakin and his mother, played by Pernilla August, by the way, who is just the heart and soul of this movie. The scene where young Anakin goes off with Qui-Gon Jinn is perhaps Jake's strongest scene.
Will I ever see you again?
What does your heart tell you?
I hope so. Yes. I guess.
It really is this wonderful little heartbreaking moment in the middle of a big loud space opera. So there were these flashes of greatness in Jake throughout this movie. Unfortunately, the scene just prior to this is where Qui-Gon tells Anakin that he's free and is going off to train as a Jedi. It felt extremely rushed and clunky and inconsistent and just all over the place.
But I want to go. It's what I've always dreamed of doing. Can I go, Mom?
I don't know, it seems like this where the writing and directing makes Anakin come off as kind of a bratty, spoiled kid. Again, not Jake's fault. This is the writing. I mean, he did build and give C-3PO life, and he was like, oh, sorry, dude. I'm out of here. Good luck with all that.
I'm gonna miss working on you. You've been a great pal. I'll make sure Mom doesn't sell you or anything.
Sell me?
And the chemistry between Jake and Natalie Portman, I mean, I don't know. Look, the awkward age gap probably didn't help things.
I care for you too. Only I miss your mother.
After the release of Phantom Menace, Jake actually did one more film, Madison. It's a period piece, and the whole story is told through Jake's character, kind of Stand By Me style, with an adult narrator. We see him interacting with this ragtag team of mechanics in the world of competitive hydroplane racing. He spends all his time working on boats with his dad, and they kind of bond over all these experiences. Like, his world just revolves around all of this.
How's your run, Dad?
Well, a little slow on that one.
Damn things are just too unreliable.
Hey, watch your mouth.
The thing I really enjoyed about Jake's performance in this is that he seems present and engaged at all times. And this had to have been a nice change of pace for him as an actor because he's interacting with more actors and not so much the CGI characters of Star Wars. Plus, unlike Phantom Menace, Dennis was there to coach him. And I feel like you can see the difference.
There's nobody that works harder at this game than the boys in that garage.
Then we should be winning.
Wow.
Jake's mother, Lisa, tried to give him as much of a normal life as possible, shielding him when she could from the hatred. But some things couldn't be avoided. A Newsweek hit piece before the Phantom Menace's release cited quote-unquote insiders who said Jake's performance was terrible, calling him Anakin Skywalker, which prompted former child actor Ron Howard to write a stern letter. Quote, "As someone who is acting professionally at an early age, I can assure you that 9-year-old Jake is quite capable of reading, understanding, and feeling the full humiliation of a piece like that. He may not be able to comprehend the reason that it was printed, however, but then, obviously, neither can I. Maybe someone from your editorial staff should try and explain it to him." And in addition to the backlash from fans, he was nominated for a Razzie Award.
With that, maybe they thought it was funny to give him a Razzie. I didn't think it was funny. None of his reps didn't think it was funny. His family didn't think it was funny. You didn't think it was funny. You know, and it was mean-spirited. You know, if you're an adult, you're supposed to be able to take that.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be so thin-skinned. He wasn't equipped to take that.
Thankfully, the Razzies have now instituted an 18-year-old age limit following intense backlash for nominating 12-year-old Ryan Kiera Armstrong from the Firestarter remake. So it took them that long to realize that they shouldn't nominate children. They should have stopped after nominating Jake. And honestly, let's just end these dumb, mean-spirited awards altogether. But I don't understand why we're still doing this.
I'm still angry about the way they treated Jake Lloyd. He was only 10 years old, that boy, and he did exactly what George wanted him to do. Believe me, I understand clunky dialogue. It's just brutal. One of the reasons I would never let my kids be in show business. Wait till you're 18. Because it's going to be an endless life of rejection, ridicule, and unemployment.
Jake would eventually return to school in Minneapolis, where he was bullied relentlessly.
I know it had a big negative effect on his mental health, but he was getting tortured by the kids at school, and everywhere he went, there's the kid from Star Wars.
As he got older, he popped up at various conventions throughout the years, talking about his experiences and connecting with fans. Inevitably, he still ran into the odd bag now and then.
And what about with the ladies? Do you get recognized a lot? Has it helped being the young Anakin?
I don't think pulling the Force card would be a really good idea with the ladies.
But it seems like you're not real happy about being asked about it?
No, I'm plenty happy being asked about it. It just seems that I'm just trying to ascertain the real meaning of your questions and make sure I give you the best interview possible.
Unprofessional interviewers aside, you can tell that maybe Jake wasn't fully comfortable with this kind of attention.
Not a big fan of cameras anymore.
Things only got worse.
And it just became a Greek tragedy, all the bad things that happened to the Lloyds. You know, his father ended up killing himself. His little sister died in her sleep. Jake, you know, schizophrenic, took the cops on a wild ride, was in jail. His mother was fighting. He said he needs his meds. He finally got into a hospital to get that, and now he's out, and she's trying to help him. But and so much of it had to do with the hate that he received. He's just a little boy.
Place is strong, but the dark side of the Force, a domain of evil it is.
As described in the films, the Force is an energy that binds us all. It can be a force of good or evil. I think segments of the Star Wars fandom have forgotten this. Every ugly thing you say, however minuscule, you're putting this negativity out into the universe, and it just creates this ripple effect, a pebble being thrown into a lake. 25 years after the release of Phantom Menace, it's clear how large those ripples have grown. But thankfully, you just read the recent comments on any Jake Lloyd interview on YouTube, and you'll find this avalanche of support and appreciation in the comments section. Fortunately, fans seem to have come around in recent years. I mean, people have finally begun to realize how awful Jake was treated, how Ahmed Best struggled. Hayden Christensen was genuinely emotional when he was welcomed back to play Anakin in the Obi-Wan series.
You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
And yet, at the same time fans have come around on these actors, they've resorted to similar, if not worse, behavior with the current roster of Star Wars cast members.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going through it again right now because Amandla from The Acolyte is one of my students. And now she's getting all the hate.
If Jake Lloyd was such a cautionary tale, why compartmentalize it as if it doesn't apply today? There's no denying that we all have the capacity to be a force of evil and contribute to that next ripple in the lake. Look, there's always room for critique for anything. I love talking about why a piece of art connected with me or didn't, and even cynicism has its place. But there's a line that can be crossed when it becomes personal. We've seen the path this can take, so let's choose a different one.
There's my Phantom Menace poster. And it's signed, "My best friend and coach, don't underestimate the power of the dark side, Jake Lloyd." And I'm very proud to have been a part of that with him, and to have seen him ride that wave.